You're listening to Protecting What Matters by the Ohio Department of Commerce. Commerce is Ohio's chief regulator, and we play a vital role in keeping you safe by protecting your property, your money, and some of the products you use every day. This is designed to bring awareness to important issues and help educate consumers and businesses. Join us as we chat with trusted industry experts focused on providing you with the tools you need to help you protect what matters most in your life.
If they truly cared about bourbon in Ohio, they would understand that the supplier wants to see fair access.
That's right.
And if the supplier doesn't see fair access, if the supplier sees flipping and unfair and illegal sales, they look to other markets.
That's right.
That's why we aggressively protect this idea of fair access in the marketplace.
Welcome to Protecting What Matters. I'm Kristen Castle, Director of Brand and Marketing Strategy for Ohio Liquor. And today I am joined by Jim Canepa, Superintendent of the Division of Liquor. Jim, one of the most frequent questions, complaints, feedback we get from customers is, how do I find the good bourbon? Where is it? Why doesn't my store have it? Ohio doesn't get anything. That's probably what I spend a lot of my time, and I know you do too, dealing with these customers and their feedback.
Well, it's a process for people to wrap their heads around the idea that the thing that they want, the reason it's in demand is because of the supply and demand equation, right? So the reason why people highly regard it is because it's in very low supply. The production is low. So American whiskey has to be meeting all of these parameters. It has to be in an American white oak barrel. It has to be charred. It has to sit there for a certain amount of time. It has to be a certain mash bill, and then it sits there and it ages. And the ones that everybody wants, no surprise, are very low production. And so, you know, it's almost human nature. Whether people actually taste it or not is secondary. It's everybody wants it, I must have it too. And so access to those sorts of things, whether it's Black Friday for low-cost TVs, or whether it's the PlayStation 5 that my son wants at Christmas, or the all-aluminum new Ford 150, or you can go on a Beanie Baby that everybody wants, or when it was Cabbage Patch Dolls, or, you know.
I remember that,
you know, the list goes on and on and on. Pokemon Go, whatever it is, what the limited number, high demand creates an access question. And so that is the question we get all the time. And right now it's bourbon, American bourbon. And not all bourbons, it's the ones that have very low production and high demand. And we're seeing it now with tequila as well.
Right.
So this question that you get all the time, that I get all the time, and if I had $5 for every time somebody asks me about, you know, Blanton's and where do they get Blanton's and why don't we get Blanton's, I could retire right now. But, you know, I was unaware of all of sort of this drama 7 years ago when I started in the job. That was really sort of in 2017. The bourbon craze really hadn't taken hold like it is now. Like right now it's in full bloom, bourbon hysteria. But back then, when I came into the position, one of the very first things all of my bourbon nerd friends wanted me to do is get the Pappy Van Winkle train back on the tracks, and I didn't even know what they were talking about. And at that time, apparently, Ohio had been cut off from Pappy Van Winkle. And for those who don't know what Pappy Van Winkle, it's a Sazerac product, very low production, an aged bourbon, 10-year, 12-year, 15-year, 20-year, 23-year in their lineup. And they had cut Ohio off. And so, hard to believe, but I go to liquor conferences a couple times a year. I meet all the suppliers and their CEOs, and I'm making the rounds, being introduced as the new superintendent for Ohio, and I get introduced to the CEO of Sazerac, Mark Brown, at the time. He still is. And he's like, "Hi, Jim, how you doing?" Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, "Hey." He's like, "What can I do for you?" I said, "Well, how do I get the Pappy spigot turned back on?" And he looks at me and he says, "You need to sell it fairly." And like, so,
Right.
I'm like, "What does that mean?" And he said, "Well, we have the Pappy lineup really isn't their moneymaker. It's a loss leader. It's a product that leads the way for other Sazerac down ticket products, so to speak, because they have Ancient Age, they have Wheatley, they have all kinds of other brands that they hope the Sazerac Pappy brand brings attention to."
Sure.
And so he goes, in Ohio, the last time they did distribution, which is relatively the same across all markets, somewhere between 700 and 1,000 bottles between the 10-year, 12-year, 15, 20, and 23. And he said it comes into Ohio, it goes into your liquor agency stores, and then it goes right out to VIPs. So only a handful of people that have the hookup with the store owner, the store cashier, the neighbor, the family, VIPs around Ohio got the goods. And he goes, and that does nothing for his brand, does nothing for his marketing and merchandising strategy. And so they cut us off because they have the choice of where their gold nuggets are going to go.
Correct.
What marketplace around the entire world, because it's an entire world demand for the same small pie of inventory of the Pappy Van Winkle lineup. And so why would he bring it to a market that doesn't accomplish his marketing objectives?
Right.
And so I'm trying to understand all this, and I said, so what is the ideal situation for you? And he says, well, the ideal situation for any company is to capture market share from their competitors. And so they want to have a marketing strategy supported and facilitated in the market that they go that is going to optimize and support a strategy to capture market share. And as long as Ohio or any other market disregards that, they're taking it somewhere else.
Right.
And so I said, so what should I do? He goes, well, the ideal situation is fair access to a limited quantity of products. And I asked him what his suggestion was, and he says, I've seen really successful efforts and very happy customers in markets that do lotteries. And so, voila, that's when lotteries came to Ohio. They've done them a long time in Kentucky. They've done them a long time in other places. And so it wasn't Jim Canepa's idea. It wasn't the Division of Liquor Control's idea. It wasn't some bureaucrat in the legislature's idea. It was the CEO of Sazerac, who has the lineup of bourbon products that everybody in the world wants. And that was his suggestion. And so that is how it got started. And so, my job, really, the priority in my job is to create a marketplace for the vendors who have the things that we all crave to be happy to come to this market. And as long as I can create a market, a fertile market, a supportive market, Ohio, it becomes the destination for these products from these suppliers. And so when people say to me, why do you do it? Why up here? Why does Columbus get this, and why not in some remote part of Ohio? Well, they have to understand that the suppliers that have the stuff that we want the most have a strategy in mind,
Right.
a marketing coverage strategy in mind, chief objective being capturing market share from their competitors. So they're looking at data of where their competitors are selling with velocity. And so no surprise, Columbus is number one in surrounding parts of Columbus, followed by Cincinnati, followed by Cleveland, followed by Dayton, followed by Toledo, followed by Youngstown, and then all parts in between. And so, it's less about where we like,
Right.
and more about supporting the supplier's strategy and keeping us at the front of their mind when it comes to where do we want to put our stuff. And so, like anybody who makes anything, who runs a business, they want easy to market, and they want to be supported, and they want the cost of their efforts to be as low as possible. So the strategy has succeeded. If you want to look at a metric to determine, has this fair access strategy paid off? Has this supporting the supplier's marketing strategy paid off? Well, you look at, in the United States, who sells the most and who sells it the fastest. Ohio's number 4, behind Texas, California, and Florida, and we're neck and neck with overtaking Florida to be the number 3rd on that list. And so when I hear people say, how come we don't get Blanton's? Well, we do.
We do.
We get 4th most.
We get a lot of it. That's
we
right.
We get 4th most.
That's right.
And that's how a supplier determines where it's going to go, is based on the data, sales data, which they track. And so that's why, when it's a jump ball between Ohio and another state for Weller Reserve, Weller Antique, Taylor, Blanton's Gold, Rock Hill Farm, Elmer T. Lee, Weller 12, Weller Full Proof. Ohio is sort of showered with those products because in 2017 we made this strategic decision to cooperate and facilitate a marketing strategy of the supplier who has the stuff everybody wants. Long answer to say, fair access is our objective, and supporting the supplier's marketing strategy is our objective.
Thanks for listening to Protecting What Matters from the Ohio Department of Commerce. We are your resource for all safety information for your home or business. Here's a quick safety message reminder from the Ohio State Fire Marshal's office.
So smoke alarms, we want to make sure we're putting those on each level of the house. Each bedroom that you're at, where anybody sleeps, put that inside that bedroom, and then outside where the people sleep. They're important because what you typically have is that early activation, early notification of something happening, in this case smoke building up, and that usually is what tells you that there's a fire happening. So having those placed in those locations that are appropriate, making sure that you're checking the alarms themselves about once a month just to make sure that they're working, change the batteries on them, we like to say twice a year right now, and then after 10 years, those entire alarms are going to need replaced.
For more information on the State Fire Marshal, visit our website at com.ohio.gov/fire. And be sure to check out some of our previous podcast episodes on all podcast platforms.
Welcome back to Protecting What Matters. We are talking with Jim Canepa, Superintendent of the Division of Liquor. Jim, to continue with fair and equal access to the popular brands, What are some of the other ways that we can move forward doing that?
So, just want to give some context to how we decide strategies moving forward. So, understanding that when we talk about access to these limited products, there's a push-pull from a number of different sources for those same products. So, generally speaking, the most feedback we get are from retail customers, the customers that are entering the lottery, and who, if they win, they go to the agency and they buy it retail. Or if you're shopping the shelves in one of our 490 agencies, that's a retail customer. But you have to keep in mind that that's just one a point of demand for those products. We also have on-premise, which is another way of saying bars, restaurants, casinos, hotels, and all the what we call wholesale customers around the state of Ohio, which are in the thousands, that want those same products on their back bar to serve by the glass when you go to that bar or the restaurant. And again, no surprise, because Ohio is the fourth largest consumer by volume and shelf dollar of bourbon. We have a lot of demand from on-prem bars, restaurants to have a really nice lineup on their back shelf. So here you have the push-pull between a retail customer and wholesale customers, and we hear it all the time, right?
We do.
Kristen, about like, I was in the liquor agency and they told me that, the Blanton's or the Taylor or whatever they had, what they have is for the bars and the restaurants. And so that is true. And so those retailers really are obligated, and part of their responsibility is to figure out their distribution between their wholesale accounts and the retail accounts. And the rule of thumb is, what is their sales ratio? So if their for an example, if their wholesale's revenue in a year is $1 million, now that would be low. Typically it's somewhere between 5 and 15 million, but let's just say $1 million. If 60% of it, or 70% of it, let's say 70% of it is retail and 30% is wholesale, 70% should be on the shelf retail, 30% should be available for wholesale. And then on the wholesale side, if they have 10 bars and restaurants, that 30% needs to be equitably distributed. And so that's why we rely on private retailers. We have, Giant Eagle, Kroger, Acme, Bueller, and a whole plethora of individual-owned agencies, privately owned agencies, retailers who have an agency store within it. And so it's a business, but their responsibility with these products is to come up with a strategy that's as fair as possible. The days of the inside track, the backdoor hookup, all of those sorts of things,
the list
are behind us. Now, does that still happen? Yes, because we get complaints.
We do.
And we investigate those complaints. And if we validate those complaints, the agency that was on the hook for that conduct at best takes a hit on a bonus, which at the end of the day is a lot of money. At worst, they risk losing their contract to sell the state's liquor inventory, which is a huge sacrifice to satisfy one customer out the back door. Because at the end of the day, there are lots and lots and lots of retailers who would like to have that deal where the OHLQ inventory is sitting on their shelves and bringing people through the door for that retailer's other higher margin items, their beer, their wine, their hoagies, their potato chips. And so there's strong incentive to do the allocations fairly as they are required to do. If not, there's great risk involved. And we've seen the compliance from 17, which was just the wild, wild west, come into alignment where there's only a handful that we really have to manage and see performance improvement plans put into place. But having said all that, we employ other strategies. We had a fair lottery at the Ohio State Fair. Really the objective there, again, like agency stores, is to bring feet through the door. The objective there was to highlight a popular brand that people really are interested in having access to, and at the same time showcasing the Ohio State Fair and bringing people, hopefully do our part to bring people to the Ohio State Fair where there's so many wonderful opportunities and vendors. And it was a huge success. Last year, I think we had 1,700 or 1,800 people enter the lottery. This year was 3,800. So
that's right.
we saw more than a double of participation in that program. We do store releases for our barrel program. Again, a little factoid here. Ohio last year bought 450 single barrels from suppliers in American whiskey category and a couple tequila and a couple other whiskey type barrels. I think we're the single largest individual buyer of barrels in the world. And so when we buy barrels, whether it's a Maker's Private Select or Smooth Ambler or New Riff or Remus or Weller or whatever it is, we do a release on a particular day. We tell people where it's going to be, in what number of stores, and at the time, and people line up, and hopefully have an opportunity to score one of those bottles. We did a single barrel Saturday, which is now going to be a thing.
Yes, it is.
In December,
Yep.
where we had a couple hundred stores participate in the single barrels around the state, and people loved it. We will probably also go back to doing some in-store raffles where the store does the old bingo tumbler.
Yes, people really miss that.
And people, it's sort of a party inside of a store. So we have all kinds of things planned, including a one-of-a-kind opportunity that only Ohio has in the country. We were in Ireland buying casks that are finished in butts. It's a whole new vernacular and a whole different, same idea, different vernacular. But, when you think about Irish whiskey, came from Scotland to Ireland to the U.S., the process is the same. The mash bills, it's grains. The finishing it is sort of a nuanced thing, but it's been there for hundreds of years, and it's just amazing. It's an amazing liquid, and Ohio is going to have an opportunity and has access to limited quantities of what they call casks, we call barrels, and when it's gone, it's gone, and we have the ability to get a bunch of it. And it's coming in. We're going to do before a St. Patrick's Day single barrel Saturday type release. Right now, preliminarily, we're naming it Celtic Casks and Craft Fest.
Love it.
And we're going to feature all these Irish distillers who are hungry to come to the U.S. market, and they're starting in Ohio, and they want to have the best first impression with the customers possible. So they're giving us really amazing, one-of-a-kind, limited production things. And the lead up to that, on ohlq.com, you're going to be able to look and read about each distiller, their history, their process, their mash bill, and why it makes what they're bringing special. And, so for all those taters who chase and either share it with their friends, which we hope they do, or they're collecting them and gathering dust, which seems like a waste.
It's a lot of work.
Waste of effort.
Right. Right.
These are one of a kind, limited production. When they're gone, snowflakes. And so that's coming up. You'll hear more about that.
Yeah, that's a great opportunity
But
for us.
I will also say this, point out one other thing, sort of as a footnote. The complaints that we get, we kind of joke, you and I and others, about like the complaints because, if we get 100 people who thank us for giving fair access, there's one person who complains because he used to have the hookup and no longer does.
That's right.
We focus on that one instead of sort of celebrating
the good stuff we're doing.
The 100%,
That's
the
right.
other 100 that were happy.
That's right.
And so, at the end of the day, it sounds cold-hearted, but I really don't care about the 1% of 1% who had the hookup who are crabby because they don't have it anymore. I don't care. If they truly cared about bourbon in Ohio, they would understand that the supplier wants to see fair access.
That's right.
And if the supplier doesn't see fair access, if the supplier sees flipping and unfair and illegal sales, they look to other markets.
That's right.
That's why we aggressively protect this idea of fair access in the marketplace.
Jim, thank you so much for joining me today. And to our listeners, always remember to raise a glass responsibly. To learn more about Ohio Liquor's commitment to social responsibility, please visit our website at ohlq.com. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for our emails to be the first to learn about all of the fun things we have planned. Thank you for listening to Protecting What Matters.